This is Hannibal here from the Hannibal TV on YouTube with a interesting UAP news update. I'll do more of a drone news one later, but I watched in detail two of former head of the Pentagon UFO program, Lou Elizondo's recent podcast today. One more recent than the other, but there was some very interesting things talked about. One of them was just released today on the Good Trouble show, and I've watched every single interview Lou Elizondo has ever done. So I know when he does say some information that he hasn't said in other interviews, and I will reveal some of that to you in this. But let me start with a quick clip that he said in this Good Trouble show that hints that maybe he will be working for the Trump administration.
Wouldn't be surprised if this administration is waiting to just, well, as soon as they come into office, saying, okay, you're now in charge. You're now going to be the drone guy. You're now in charge. You're now going to be the UAP guy or gal, and you report directly to me. There's a lot of things we could do very, very quickly that could completely reform and rehabilitate the way we do business regarding drones and even UAP. It's not hard. In a single month, you put a guy like me up there, and we can fix the problem very quickly. And
so there you go. In a single month, you put a guy like me up there and we could fix the problem very quickly. He publicly tweeted to Trump as well. Let me go over some of the other stuff that he said in this. And I will talk about the other interview as well. But let me go into this first interview that I just finished watching, the Good Trouble show, which is a UAP podcast. So let's jump into the points I found interesting. He said Biden's administration is embarrassingly incompetent in this situation. Again, I mean, that is true. But again, it leads me to believe, even though every time he insults Biden's administration, he says he's not political, it does lead me to believe he might be doing something within the Trump administration. He did do something I forget exactly what he did for Obama, but he did do something with Obama related to security. He says, as far as the incidents that happened in his house back when he was running the Pentagon UAP program, he had a situation where some orbs, I guess, were following him from about 2010 to 2016 in his house. They'd appear in his house. Balls up to the size of volleyballs that would pass through walls and doors. They were not just happening to him in his house, they were happening to other people. All other people in the ATIP program he was running also had this same thing. They moved at a pace of about a fast walking speed. They didn't stay around long. They didn't make a sound, and they didn't disturb anything. They happen mostly in the evenings. You'd see them one day in the kitchen, hallway, living room, one time per day, or once every few weeks from about 2010 to 2016. They looked like a neon light, more bright at the center. They did not seem like there was a device inside the plasma ball. It looked more than like a plasma ball than it had something inside. He didn't set up cameras because it always took place in different areas. And I'm sorry, I made a mistake. This is from his Theories of Everything podcast that I guess I'll crisscross from all of them. Here, I'll tell you guys the most interesting thing he said in the Theories of Everything podcast. One of his To the Stars Academy's cohorts, Jim Semivan, who used to be in the FBI, had been talking for years about a potential UAP experience. And I guess Lou shed some light on that in this interview with Theories of Everything, that former CIA member Jim Semivan may have actually had an implant and definitely had a negative UAP experience. Now, he doesn't mention him by name, but I'll play what he said. But this Jim Semivan has talked about it, but not in detail. And here's Lou talking about something that That certainly sounds like the incident with Jim Semivan, which, hold on, let me just play this here.
So maybe this person will become public one day, but he's a senior CIA official who had a very scary UAP encounter with his wife. And they actually went to the CIA and to some of the doctors, and they were able to extract, well, first of all, the individual had a hole punched in the back of their neck, but the wife, when she blew her nose, had a foreign object that was.
So there you go. He doesn't exactly reveal the name that it's Jim Semivan, but I've heard Jim Semivan from the CIA talk about an incident that occurred with him and his wife. And I mean, they have a long history together. So I'm only assuming that was Jim Semivan he was talking about. Okay, so let me go back to the other interview now. And I'm sorry for going back and forth. I screwed something up in my notes. Let me go back to the Good Trouble Show notes. In this, Lou said the government has said UAPs are real. He said John Kirby has no credibility at all as far as one of the White House representatives who's saying there's nothing to see here, basically. He says they're acting like everything is just a drone, and this is something new that they haven't seen happening before. Lou says this has been happening as far as incursions over bases since at least 2019, 2020, when they had a big incident in Colorado. He says if this stuff is foreign, if it was foreign, we would be in big trouble right now. So he hints that it's something more UAP than foreign. He says these things have no radio frequencies. They loiter for up to 5 hours. They can possibly be traversing distances of hundreds of miles to get to the destinations, most of which are near or over bases. No matter what they are, they're tremendously well organized. And even if this is nothing, and it's definitely nothing citizens can do, and it's very hard to do anonymously, like they are doing if the government is truly saying they don't know what this is. A lot of these things have been coming out of water, and now we're hearing reports that some water might actually be contaminated. And Lou isn't saying that. These are reports that I've seen just later today. And it's interesting because one of the commenters on my videos not too long ago said, why are we so worried about what's going on in the air? What are they doing over in the water? Could they be polluting the water? If it's not a base down there, what could they be doing to the water? I mean, one of the Coast Guard people that had the 30 to 50 ships following their boat has publicly spoke out against the White House's comments saying that this is nothing. Apparently, these things appear to be communicating with each other. The drones look like they are scanning the areas where the UAPs have been. And some of them are definitely drones. Another thing that I will say separate from Lou that I've been seeing reported is some of these more UAP objects appear to be apparently emitting some type of radiation. So as far as the radiation story, it could also be coming from the actual unknown mystery UAPs. As Mr. Elizondo says here, a lot of these are drones that appear to be either looking for something or checking out the UAPs themselves. He says the current regime are doing a horrible job at dealing with this. The CIA, FBI, and Homeland Security, none of them, from what he understands, all three levels are trying to pass it off to the other levels. They're not working together. He says the new government will have greater transparency. And as I showed earlier, if they put him in charge of this drone situation, he says it's something he could deal with in about a month. And I actually believe him on this. He says NATO is starting to get concerned about this situation because of the growing incidents overseas. There has been at least one incursion over Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland. He has no idea on the intent of these, and the government is saying they have no idea. He agrees with the president that with the incoming president, Donald Trump, because Biden is saying there's nothing nefarious, which seems to be a term that they're telling everyone in the current government to say last week. Nothing nefarious, just keep repeating that term. But Lou is saying that he thinks they should be shot down if they don't know what they are, because threat would be an issue no matter what they are, flying over legal areas and areas without permission, and they're not properly reporting to the FAA. Okay, so now I will go back into the Theories of Everything interview where I just spoke about the implant situation. Sorry, I'm going back to the first interview. I keep flip-flopping. Sorry. He says there's been incursions in Europe and over California, Virginia, Maryland, and Washington. And we also know, and it could be unrelated, there was an Oregon pilot that saw some of this stuff last week. He says the drones appear to, the ones that look to be more drones appear to be 3 to 5 meter military craft. He has no idea where they're coming from or going to. There's a conflict in the government to figure out if it's a criminal act of war. The government is saying it is not a covert military exercise. And Lou says it's time for these people to take it from a national security perspective and do something about it. For the people that say that there's nothing to worry about, he says these people should be fired immediately. He says a well-resourced nation is sending drones worth hundreds of thousands of dollars each illegally over the U.S. Some could be a few years ago, I guess, there have been some Chinese cargo vessels that have appeared to drop drones. There was the Chinese weather balloon. There was the Chinese drone that they did capture the guy, Chinese national, last week flying over a Space Force base in California. And there's some evidence China is responsible for the Langley Air Force Base incursions. So that's something within the news. So now let me go back to the Theories of Everything one. He says that people have wanted disclosure for about a decade now, and things are moving a lot faster now. If you think about it, things have moved more in the last 6 or 7 years than they've moved in about the last 100 years, or at least 70 years. He says people are being impatient. Yes, it seems slow, but there's a lot going on right now. As far as addressing if he meditates, he says when he's not drinking coffee or running a million miles an hour, he's sleeping. However, he says he's still remote views, and he says this is based in science and quantum mechanics. He doesn't believe it's psychic ability related. He's not going to say anything more than that. And then he went on to say the clip I played earlier about the CIA guy who had a UAP implant. And he also says he personally held a UAP implant from another U.S. service member who had had an incident with the UAP. He said the UAP implant had its own metabolism, so the chip itself was alive and had an internal energy supply, and it was actually difficult to take it out because it kept moving. He described the senior CIA official's encounter, who I'm assuming is Jim Semivan, as a scary encounter. He says, other than the 5 UAP observables, another effect that is not often stated is the biological effects on humans who have had encounters with UAP. They are often negative. Then he went on. I mean, that podcast was more of a philosophical podcast, which I'm not even saying right. And he said he believes some people have souls, others don't. Some people are putting comments here. Someone says it's a war against humanity and we are contributing to our own destruction. Someone's hiding under their school desk. The main things I get out of this is I seem to think that Mr. Elizondo is going to have some type of job dealing with this with the Trump administration. It seems like, I mean, we're about 28 days away from his inauguration. A lot of stuff could happen within those days, but it seems like the future President Trump, the President-elect Trump, is probably going to deal with this better than how it's being dealt with now, with what they're saying, where we're just not going to worry about it. Nothing nefarious. With just seems weird. I agree with Elizondo, the people that are saying that, considering all this stuff that's happened, should be fired. Someone says he just saw a video of a fighter jet launching a missile that hit something about 300 feet off the deck over water with New York City in the background. The thing is, there's a lot of, I'm only really posting any UAP videos that I send of people that I know a little bit. There's a lot of fake stuff being put out there. I don't know what's real or what's fake, but it's easy to fake stuff these days. But very interesting. I'm going to do more research on it, and I'll do another update tonight. But definitely interesting that Mr. Elizondo is kind of, if there hasn't been talk about it, he's putting it out there. He could deal with this and have it taken care of in about 30 days. So that's interesting.